The end, when it came, was swift. After more than half a century of brutal control over Syria, the Assad regime has been toppled. What began 10 days ago with a large-scale attack by rebel forces in the north ended in the capital, Damascus, which fell with almost no resistance. President Bashar al-Assad and his family are now in exile in Moscow. Abu Mohammad al-Jolani ousted him and declared a victory for all Syria. He heads up the jihadi group Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, formerly the Syrian branch of al-Qaida, but which has been seeking to market itself as a more moderate group. World leaders are now monitoring the change of power, reacting with cautious optimism as fundamental questions remain over how the rebel coalition will balance the many competing interests. Civilians have been celebrating in the streets, while prisoners, including women and children, have been released from Assad's notorious jails. Around 100,000 people disappeared inside them during 14 years of civil war. Senior correspondent Lisette Raymer tracks the astonishing events of the past 24 hours.
Celebratory gunfire crackled and euphoria took over. Freedom has arrived in Syria. Words and scenes that had been banished for so many into category impossible. After half a century of repressive rule, the House of Assad collapsed with astonishing speed. In Syria today, they were rejoicing, riding a statue of Bashar al-Assad's father through the streets and holding aloft the head of the regime as if it were a hunter's trophy. This couple marked the day with a shotgun wedding. It is the most beautiful moment of our lives, the groom said. And this reporter stripped off his protective vest to bask in the safety of a new era.
Now I can understand that my children will not be raised under oppression.
The revolution has brought light into the darkest corners of Assad's dictatorship. At this prison, where so many thousands were killed for speaking out that a crematorium was built next door, a frightened young boy comes into view, just as rebel fighters deliver the so recently unfathomable words. Don't be scared, Assad has fallen. Just days ago, disrespecting the despot would have landed you behind bars. Now Syrians are trampling over his face and into his home. Assad is in hell, in the dustbins of history, this man says, as he joins the many revolution tourists exploring Assad's abandoned palace of egotism. But for the millions of displaced Syrians, it is their own homes they are most eager to return to. These roads are usually clogged with people trying to escape to a better life, but today they were blocked in reverse, a highway of hope. The rebels announced the toppling of the Syrian leader on TV as Assad vanished in silence to Moscow, leaving his prime minister to ensure a peaceful transition of power. It now rests with this man, Abu Mohammad al-Jolani, who was listed as a terrorist in many countries and spearheaded the takeover. Leader of the Islamic HTS forces, he is promising a government chosen by the people.
I'm so scarred that I just worry I'm being naively optimistic, you know? We've been through hell. So, yeah. The outlook is a bit uncertain. I'll just leave it to that.
Karam Shah fled Syria and moved to New Zealand in 2016. He had lost hope this day would come, but never forgot the suffering.
And I'm glad. I'm glad it's all over.
There have been few tears shed for the Assad regime, but there are different dangers on the horizon now. HTS may have undergone a conversion on the long road to Damascus, but world leaders are anxiously watching as the power shifts to a militant Islamic group with links to al-Qaida.
ISIS will try to take advantage of any vacuum to reestablish its capabilities and to create a safe haven. We will not let that happen. In fact, just today, U.S. forces conducted a dozen of precision strikes, airstrikes, within Syria, targeting ISIS camps and ISIS operatives.
This isn't just an earthquake for Syria. Russian firepower has helped to keep Assad in power for years. His loss is a blow to Putin's prestige.
I think it's a huge geopolitical setback for Putin, and Mr. Putin's going to have to watch his back now in the Kremlin, because there'll be, as in any leadership, even a dictatorship, there'll always be people who think they can do better than the boss.
The score hasn't settled in Syria yet. The winners and losers across the region and the world are yet to emerge in finality. But for the first time in more than 50 years, there is hope for something better.
Well, Lissette's with us now. Kia ora, Lisette. So there will be a lot of countries that will be watching very closely to see what happens next in Syria.
Absolutely. For the likes of Iran and Russia, this is a devastating blow. The war in Ukraine has clearly weakened Putin to the point where he could offer no support to Assad. Similar can be said for Iran. We've already seen Israel come out today and take credit for the whole thing, saying that their war with Hamas and Hezbollah has weakened Iran and they were unable to come and offer any assistance. Israel perhaps has been the quickest to capitalise on this, to mobilise. They've got their troops at the border and actually some of them reportedly heading into Syria already. Part of that could be because they're fearful of what this new regime is going to look like. And that is, to be fair enough. So far, they're presenting very much as a moderate. They are being very supportive of the minorities in Syria, sending out all the right signals. There's been no major attacks since they came into this newfound power. But there is a difficult situation here, especially for countries like the US who consider the new ruler to be a terrorist. There's a $10 million bounty out on his head in the States. So the United States and all Western leaders, the European leaders, are now having to weigh up whether or not they can and are prepared to do business with this man who is now a huge political presence in Syria. They need to determine whether or not they can trust him. When it comes to Biden, you've seen he's come out and authorised immediately a huge attack on Syria to stop the re-emergence of ISIS. But Trump has come out today and said, no, we have no right to be in Syria. I don't want to get involved when I am president. So it is incredibly complicated and it's not going to be solved overnight. There's understandably a concern about trusting the new regime off the bat, but there's also an argument to be made here for the Western countries showing some support for the new regime and even incentivising it potentially by eliminating some of the sanctions on them so that they're encouraged to follow through and set up what we hope will be a democracy.
And open that dialogue. So much has happened so rapidly. Lisette, thanks for your analysis.